Li Qianlong was extremely flustered, thinking to himself, he doesn't follow martial ethics and dares to launch a sneak attack. The people below were also stunned, their mouths agape because Hanju's speed was simply too fast. Hanju wasted no time and used the 6 paths of absolute seal, pressing his palm to Wei Yuan's forehead. From the moment he stepped into the void realm, lightning-like divine abilities manifested. This new seal could suppress and kill the enemy's soul, like a trump card. With the body intact but the soul lost, the enemy's knees slammed into the ground, and the moment Hanju released his hand, the enemy fell unconscious. Li Qianlong watched this scene and shouted Elder Wei Yuan, still in shock when he heard Hanju's words, "It's your turn." Hanju controlled the sword's edge, aiming it directly at Li Qianlong's chest. He then raised his hand, flicking his fingers lightly, causing spiritual energy to scatter. They quickly flew toward his body, dissolving the golden core, tearing apart the nascent soul, and severely injuring the enemy's divine soul. Within a few minutes, Hanju had dealt with the 2 strongest opponents. Everyone was stunned by this scene, speechless and unable to react. After a moment, someone hesitantly asked, "Sect leader, should we continue the attack?" The sect leader immediately shouted angrily, "Attack? What nonsense! Are you out of your mind? We came to assist Yuling sect." Then, the person pretended to smile and said, "Looks like Yuling sect doesn't need our help anymore, we'll leave now. Sorry for the disturbance." Seeing the team fleeing in a hurry, Hanju thought, fortunately, the 19 sects didn't go all out. If they were all killed, Yuling sect would become the enemy of the entire Great Yen cultivation world. Now, we only need to suppress them. Hanju quickly arrived at the main hall, and after entering, he shouted, "Sect leader, Li Qianlong is up to you." Hearing this, everyone asked in disbelief, "Is it over already? They haven't even started the banquet." He then returned to his cave residence behind the mountain. Hanju gently placed Wei Yuan's body down. He immediately cast a spell, muttering an incantation in his mind to release it. A vague shadow immediately appeared in front of him. He was so moved that tears streamed down his face as he stammered, "Elder of God slaying." Hanju coldly spoke, "Huang Zuantian, listen carefully. Do you want to be revived?" His words left Huang Zuantian stunned. He hesitantly asked, "Do you mean to revive me?" Hanju answered seriously, "Yes, there is a body here whose soul has been destroyed, but the physical body still has life. As long as you seize the body, you can revive." After hearing this, Huang Zuantian immediately knelt and bowed. "Huang Zuantian swears to serve the senior as a servant in the future, or my heart demon will invade and I will die without a trace." His head was swollen, but he didn't care, continuing, "I'm determined to follow you. After I'm revived, I will sever all ties with the holy sect of Liuyi. From now on, I belong to you." However, Hanju awkwardly said, "Sorry, the holy sect of Liuyi has been destroyed." Regardless of his disappointment at this news, Hanju silently evaluated, "Huang Zuantian is good at making connections, but I can't fully trust him just because of what he said." The next words caught Huang Zuantian's attention, "This body's identity is not simple. It's the vice sect leader of the Jiolong sect." Hanju stated his purpose, "I just destroyed the soul of a great cultivator in the void realm. Now I want you to replace him." He was terrified by the words void realm, stuttering, "If you command it, I swear I will not refuse." He explained with frustration, "I don't want you to do anything by replacing him, just afraid that those behind him might come for revenge and disturb my cultivation, do you understand?" Tun Thien quickly nodded repeatedly to show that he understood. Hanju coldly said, "You only need to help me cover up this matter for Jiolong sect. Also, I've left a mark in your soul. If you dare to betray me in the future, I can crush you with a thought." After hearing this, he immediately kneeled and sincerely said, "Rest assured, I will never oppose you." After the assurance, Hanju ordered Tun Thien to begin the soul possession. 7 days later, the system notified, Huang Tian's favorability has increased, current favorability is 5 stars. Hanju speculated, it seems the soul possession was successful. In Wei Yuan's body, he is very grateful. Tun Thien respectfully said, "Mission accomplished, I have successfully possessed him." Seeing this, he felt something was still off about old Huang. He then asked, "Thank you for your kindness, senior. May I know your name and Dao title? Calling you Elder of God Slaying seems impolite." Hanju thought for a moment and replied, "Call me Reincarnation." He thought to himself, since the 6 paths of reincarnation have succeeded, it's not inappropriate to be called by this name. But Tun Thien had a different thought, daring to use reincarnation as a Dao title, truly not simple. I must cling tightly to this person. Suddenly, he hesitated and said, "Elder Reincarnation, I just sensed that Jiulong sect is summoning me. As you predicted, they must be anxious since Wei Yuan has been missing for so long." He quickly said, "We should leave for Jiulong sect immediately." He did not forget to remind, Jiulong sect is outside of Dian in Zaiwanzu. Don't go the wrong way, remember not to expose yourself. Huang Tian immediately accepted the order. Before he left, Hanju reminded again, "If it's not easy to be deceived, speak less. After all, you're a great cultivator in the Void Realm, they won't dare to force you." He calmly responded, "Rest assured, I have a plan to solve this in one go." Hanju didn't understand Tun Thien's meaning, so he asked, but he only answered lightly, "Use my original profession." After thinking for a moment, Tun Thien turned back and asked, "Does Senior need me to take the position of sect leader in Jiulong sect?" His words left Hanju stunned for a long time. Then he casually said, "If you're happy, that's fine." After Tun Thien accepted the order, he bid farewell and prepared to leave. At this time, the system suddenly notified, "You have successfully protected Yuling sect and received a spellbook. Congratulations. You have obtained Restoration Technique, which allows all living beings to reveal their true form." After reading this, Hanju thought deeply, "Now that the system has notified me, it means that if I don't keep this trump card, Yuling sect will face trouble." It seems being cautious wasn't wrong, the cause and effect is truly frightening. 1 month later, Li Chengzi excitedly held a toy box and said, "I came to give Elder God Slaying some treasures." He happily pointed to a large pile of things behind him. "Thanks to Elder Han, all the sect leaders from the 19 sects came, apologized to us, and sent many things. I picked out some good items to give to Elder." Hanju helplessly responded, "The sect leader is very thoughtful." Suddenly, Li Chengzi's attitude changed, angrily saying, "I've confronted the leaders of the major sections. The person behind this is that bastard Li Qianlong. He has already been imprisoned by me." Then he sighed, looking worried, and explained, "We've issued a warrant for Zhou Fan and Mo Fujio, but those two seem to have completely disappeared. I'm a bit worried about them." Hanju coldly said, "Don't worry. They have the ability, they may have already left Dian." Li Chengzi replied, "I hope so. Speaking of the Wei family, it's the same. The Wei family has already been expelled from the Dian immortal realm by other sections. Without their interference, the major forces of Dian have become much quieter. Don't worry, that's fine, we don't intend to dominate. We just hope to cultivate peacefully so that our sect can go further." After Li Chengzi left, Hanju ordered the system, open Zhou Fan and Mo Fujio's social connections. Mo Fujio and Zhou Fan's friends accidentally entered the ancient forbidden land and obtained the ancient bitter inheritance. Hanju ate while reading the information and speculated, will these two end up together? He didn't think too much about them for now. Next came a series of messages from his close associates. He felt a little deflated, thinking to himself, these people, especially the disciples, why can't they make things easier for me? Just as Hanju was lost in thought, the system gave another notification. Detected a false manifestation of predestined fortune. This information surprised him, and he couldn't help but think it would cause trouble. Could it be another person? Hanju hesitated for a moment and clicked the option the system had just provided. He felt dejected and confused, thinking, is it another troublemaker? At this moment, the system presented a large amount of personal information about Zun Chang'an. Hanju looked at the flood of information in his mind and couldn't help but sigh. He looked at the section the system specifically highlighted, impressive, a spiritual energy collector model humanoid. Suddenly, he noticed a line of text, Wait, he came specifically to find me? Hanju suddenly remembered the previous introduction and had a bunch of question marks in his head. He silently evaluated himself. Am I really that famous? A figure kneeled in front of a large stone tablet engraved with the words bitter cultivation leads to immortality, muttering to himself, this should be Elder God Slang's cave, right? He was Zun Chang'an, and he clasped his hands together and said firmly, this must be the place. Zun Chang'an speculated, Elder God Slang is a person who has undergone bitter cultivation. He will surely help me escape from my misery. He then thought of Xiao Mei and couldn't help but tear up. I can never lick the ground under her skirt again. At this moment, Zun Chang'an suddenly kneeled to the ground, knocking his head continuously, shouting loudly in front of the large stone tablet, I, the poor monk Zun Chang'an, humbly ask Elder God Slang to accept me as a disciple. But after an hour passed, no one responded. Zun Chang'an's mood dropped. Why is there no response? Could it be that the senior is not here? He put his palms together on his forehead, pushing away the thought from earlier, no, the senior must be testing me. As long as I persist, my sincerity will surely move the senior. Zun Chang'an kneeled again, sincerely saying, please accept me as your disciple, senior. In reality, all of this was seen from Hanju's divine sense. Hanju stroked his chin and pondered, ancient spiritual ginseng is good, but it might also bring trouble. Let's wait and see. Spring arrived, and he was still kneeling in front of the large stone tablet. By summer, a heavy rain fell, but he remained motionless as a mountain. Autumn passed, flowers bloomed, and everyone gathered to laugh and play together. Finally, winter arrived, and the snow covered Zun Chang'an's entire body, yet he still didn't move. It was no longer winter, and suddenly a voice rang out, waking his consciousness. The person asked, aren't you tired after kneeling for so long? The person speaking was Mo. He raised his head to look at her and replied, to see through the beauty in the bones, how could I be tired? Mo looked at him, her brow slightly furrowed, confused by Zun Chang'an's words. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a pitiful expression, stuttering as he asked, are you Elder God Slang? Mo didn't turn to look at him, confirming that she was not. Mo looked up at the blue sky, her emotions unclear, and she whispered, such roles are born to make us look up to them. Mo furrowed her brows, her eyes filled with cold, chilling light. Hanju was not willing to show weakness, staring at her intently. He sat cross-legged opposite Mo and asked, Miss Mo, do you intend to follow your elder brother? And fall into the devil's way? She quickly confirmed, I plan to find my cousin and seek revenge. Hearing this, he slightly curled his lips and asked, after all these years, can you still not let go of the grudges? Mo's expression was vague, the corners of her mouth curving slightly. I thought I had let go of the hatred, but after cultivating to this point, I realized it has become my heart demon. She stretched her slender hands out in front of her, if I can't overcome the heart demon, I will forever be bound and unable to reach the nascent soul stage. After speaking, Mo clenched her fists tightly. She turned her face and softly said, I came specifically to say goodbye to you, everyone in the Yuqing sect except for my cousin. Hanju silently watched Mo, his eyes showing no signs of fluctuation. She slightly lowered her head and spoke her true feelings, the person I care about most is you. You're the only one who has made me feel something. After speaking, Mo leaned closer to Hanju, and the two were face to face. Dragonflies flew over the water's surface, surrounded by small clusters of flowers, creating a beautiful scene. Mo leaned forward, leaving Hanju with a confused expression, and softly said to him, there are some things I must do, or I'll regret it later, so let's part ways here. Mo narrowed her eyes slightly, her face softened, and a slight blush appeared on her face. Suddenly, a mysterious force tightly grabbed Mo's hand. She widened her eyes in surprise, and looked toward the person who had made this move. Hanju was still sitting there, his hand tightly gripping the person's wrist without releasing it. He coldly glanced at Mo and said, your mind is made up, be careful on the road. Mo decisively pulled her hand back, cursing Hanju inwardly, idiot, what are you waiting for? Why hasn't he shown any attitude? She turned her back to him, her face gloomy, a tear gently falling from her eye. I don't know when I'll see you again after this farewell, I really can't accept it. MOU tightly shut her lips, constantly repeating one phrase in her heart, I am unwilling. Suddenly, she turned around and shouted his name, followed by a question, if I come back safely, would you marry me? After hearing this, Hanju gently lowered his head, his face showing no expression. He raised his head to look at her, smiling lightly and said, of course, you will come back safely. MOU heard these words, tears welled up in her eyes, and her heart was filled with joy. As expected, I didn't misjudge him. But contrary to what MOU had expected, as soon as she walked out of the cave, she was caught and tied up by the sect leader. MOU cried and struggled, like a helpless caterpillar. At this moment, Hanju showed an expression that made one want to hit him, pointing at her and saying, didn't I say you would be safe? The two people behind sighed and cursed her. MOU was carried on someone's back, her mouth constantly cursing, while the black-eyed chicken nearby lightly mocked her. Over here, he was shaking hands with the elder. Thanks to your divine sense, we were able to know about these matters. We can no longer allow Yuqing sect's disciples to fall into demonic ways. Hanju responded with a polite smile. At this moment, Li Changzi suddenly remembered something and asked, Elder Han, there was a monk kneeling on the mountain earlier. If I remember correctly, he has been kneeling for 5 years. Hanju immediately froze upon hearing this. He remembered Zun Chang'an, still kneeling in front of the stone tablet, and silently thought to himself, I got too absorbed in cultivation and almost forgot about him. Zun Chang'an was now completely covered by leaves, birds nesting on his body. He mumbled, please, Elder God Slaying, accept me as your disciple. Just then, a voice in front of him caught his attention. He looked up. Zun Chang'an saw the person's figure obscured by sunlight and couldn't help but call out. Hanju glanced at the person on the ground and lightly smiled, confirming that the person he was looking for was indeed him. He was kneeling on the ground, awkwardly speaking, Disciple Zun Chang'an, greetings to Master. Hanju coldly looked at him and asked, to join my sect, unless you become an immortal, you can never leave this mountain. Are you willing? He smiled on his face, secretly admiring the person. Zun Chang'an respectfully kowtowed, expressing his intent, I only wish to close myself off in cultivation, far from the mundane world, which is why I came here. Hanju, hearing this, lightly responded, good, your temperament is not bad. Follow me. He immediately agreed after hearing that. Zun Chang'an was slightly trembling, and beads of sweat began to appear on his face. Hanju stood with his hands on his hips, looking at him, find a place to cultivate. Once you break through to the golden core, I will teach you magic. He thanked Hanju with exhaustion, while the black-eyed chicken next to him thought he wanted to eat Hanju. Suddenly, the system notification sound rang, catching his attention. He glanced at it lightly. The system reported his achievements and gave him 3 choices. Hanju pondered as he stared at the screen, rubbing his chin, carefully analyzing each option, and then realized that the third one was the best. Hanju pressed the third option on the screen without hesitation. The system rang, congratulating Hanju for his choice, and then explained the magic he had just acquired. Looking at its name, Hanju silently imagined how to use it, feeling somewhat speechless. From the rock wall, a voice came out, and someone shouted loudly, this is too much, please pass down more. Unconsciously, 12 years had passed. During this time, many things had happened. A group of people stood straight, their expressions serious, each one looking cold. Yuqing sect had logically risen to become the largest sect in Duyan, and as for how Hanju knew about these matters, he stood there like a wooden chicken, his eyes wide open, his mouth shaped like an O. Hanju lay on the ground, looking at the list of friends he had accumulated over the years. His number of friends among the disciples of Yuqing sect had increased to an astonishing figure. He angrily pointed at the list and cursed, so many friends, when will I finish looking through them? Are you still going to let me cultivate? Hanju lazily placed his hand on his forehead, lightly sighing, the content and friends are all a mess. Normally, I wouldn't care, but I have to flip through them to find someone, it's too troublesome. At this moment, the system spoke, catching his attention. He glanced at it wearily. The system displayed an image of Xing Hongtuan and provided an explanation for Han Ju.